everyone. It is Wednesday, March 9th, 2011. I'm reading the Medford Daily Mercury. Madame Tussaud, a novel of the French Revolution. President Obama visits Boston. Want to meet Rex Trailer, the real Rex Trailer? Mike Bavaro, I want to meet the real Rex Trailer.
You want to meet him?
It's in the paper. Can I read him?
Say hello, Rex Trailer.
Rex Trailer.
Yeah,
Oh my
that's
God.
me.
We were at a party.
I always wanted to meet the real Rex Trailer.
I just did. Actually, you were talking about the theme music. I wrote that song August 18th, 1987, in Rhode Island at Normandy Sound, while we were recording music for the late JoJo Lang, dear friend of yours.
Yeah.
And you came to her party. We had the kids threw a surprise party for her at a house in Chelsea or East Boston, and Rex was kind enough to show up. She was so happy. But Clive Davis from Arista Records wrote to the late Jimmy Miller, the Rolling Stones producer, and said he would like to hear JoJo Lane's session. So we recorded some music with JoJo and sent them to Arista. She didn't get a deal, but we made some tapes. And, you know, did you have her in car commercials, or did she do?
Oh, I did several commercials with her.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. She was very talented
Oh, yeah.
lady.
Oh, I miss her terribly.
Yeah.
I miss her phone calls. You know, it's she was just such a beautiful woman. But here we are today. The reason I asked you on the show was I got a petition on my email about a senator in Lincoln
Senator Fargo.
wants to have a cowboy of the Commonwealth. And there are probably a lot of cowboys in the Commonwealth, but I can't think of anyone who deserves it more than Rex Trailer.
Well, thank you, Joe.
So I wanted to have you on the show to talk about.
It's great to be here.
You know, our paths crossed again in 1995. You were doing Boomtown Revisited in Woburn, Stoneham Cable?
Yes.
Yeah, so do you know how many episodes?
There were about 30 episodes of
You did
that.
that many?
Yeah.
Whoa. So you
And-
have all them.
Dita Hagen was the host, and she had been my student at Emerson College. And she said, after we finished up her class, she said, I'd like to do something on cable, and we'll do Boomtown Revisited.
Great idea.
And we used tapes that we had from the show. And she put together a wonderful show, and she was very nice to know because she eventually would take care of my horse at her ranch.
Oh, marvelous.
And so when I had a personal appearance anywhere in the area, she'd board my horse overnight.
And what was your horse called?
Gold Rush.
Gold Rush.
Yeah.
And where was this ranch?
Well, it was a farm in not Wilmington.
Boxford or Boxborough?
Oh, Boxford.
That's near Lincoln, isn't it?
I think it's the one up in the North Shore.
Yeah.
Oh, no, not. Oh, got it.
I get those confused, Boxford and Boxborough.
Me too.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah. Now, okay, there were, and I should remember this by heart, but I have to read these things because I wrote this. Pablo, Cactus Pete, and Sergeant Billy. One of these fellows lived in Woburn?
That was Pablo,
Ah,
whose real name was Richard Kilbride,
aha,
not a Mexican.
okay. But these are great memories because growing up, and you had a wonderful reign on BZ, on Channel 4.
It was a terrific run. Terrific run.
The thing about your show was that, sure, we had Bozo, and we had Miss Jean with Romper Room, and we had Captain Kangaroo, but you were local, and you were a big star locally to us, and that was important for the kids, because even though Frank Avarouche did a wonderful Bozo, it was a national kind of chain, and you were our guy.
He's a one of a kind.
Yeah.
And a real, I mean, this is no costume. This is really Rex Trailer.
Yeah, so you've been a cowboy all your life.
Since I was a kid, I worked at my grandfather's ranch every summer, and most of it was mucking out stalls
Okay.
and taking care of the horses. And that's the way I got my start. And he was a wonderful mentor
And what state was that in?
Texas,
It's real Texas cowboy. Oh,
near
my God.
Fort Worth.
Man. So you got on horses at a very young age.
Well, my grandfather put me on a horse shortly after I learned to walk. And I feel more comfortable on a horse than I do driving or anything else, or
Interesting.
walking.
And you were down in Philly for a while doing a TV show?
Pardon me?
I was watching.
Yeah, before your Philly days, before you came to Boston.
There was a Philadelphia show.
And before that was New York. I was on the air in New York. Do we have time to tell that story?
Oh, sure, yeah.
We have 55
yeah,
minutes,
we get
sure.
time. This is a good story.
Okay, I was with the rodeo because my grandfather used to hire rodeo cowboys in their off season. And they got a big kick out of this kid, me, who wanted to do all the things that they did. So one of them taught me to play the guitar. Another one taught me to snap a bullwhip. Another one taught me trick roping. Another one taught me trick riding. So I did all of that. And then they took me on the road with them. And I did a little act
On stage.
in the rodeo, out in the arena. And so we were playing Madison Square Garden. And Gabby Hayes, the great character actor, John Wayne's sidekick,
Uh-huh.
came backstage after the show and he said, "Hey, really enjoyed your performance. I have a ranch up in the Catskills for kids. I'd like you to come up there and teach them all the tricks." And he told me what the pay was going to be, and it took me about 30 seconds to make up my mind, and I did that. At the end of the season, George Gabby Hayes sat me down and he said, "Hey, Rex, what are you going to do with your life?" And I said, "Well, what I'm doing right now." And he said, "You ought to be on TV." And I said, "Okay."
This is 1948. TV was
Yeah.
in its
Yeah.
infancy.
Amazing.
And so I said, "How do I go about that?" He said, "Well, we're in New York State. New York City is right down the road. Pack up your stuff, go on down there, see if you can get a spot on TV." So I did. I went to CBS, got kicked out. Went to NBC, got kicked out, and a couple of other stations. And then I went to Dumont Television. And Dumont Television was one of the first TV stations. And the same thing happened. We don't hire cowboys here. And so, okay, I was pretty disheartened. But I walked around to the back of the studio where my car was parked, and I passed this big open door, scene dock. And there were it was summertime, and a bunch of guys were in there painting scenery. And I stood there and watched for a while. I didn't have anything else to do. So one of the fellows, who was obviously the foreman, said, Rudy, I remember his name. And he said, hey, looking for a job? Hey, as a matter of fact, I am. And he said, can you paint scenery? Yep. I knew I could paint scenery because I was watching those guys.
Okay.
And I could do whatever the heck they were doing. So I was on board. I was in the door.
Interesting.
And so I was painting scenery for a week, got my check, and then Rudy said, oh, by the way, they're looking for a production coordinator here. Can you do that? Yep. I had no idea what a production coordinator was. So I soon found out production coordinator is a gopher. Go for this, go for that. And so I did that for about 2 months. And then somebody else came to me and said, hey, Harry, our chief director here, is leaving for Hollywood. And before he goes, he needs an assistant director. Not in Hollywood, but
Yeah.
in New York. Can you do that? Yep. So I was assistant director to a fellow who later on became a famous director in Hollywood. He left to go to Hollywood, and then somebody came to me and said, hey, we're looking for somebody to replace Harry. And you know all his tricks, so how would you like to do it? I was 17 at the time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, most people didn't know that at the station. And then I did that for a while. One day the production manager came into the control room and said, hey, we're thinking of doing a kid show on Saturday morning. And we're looking for a cowboy who can do all the tricks and stunts and entertain the kids. If you know of anybody, send them around. And so I show up, and most of the people didn't have any idea that I was interested in that. But I showed up in cowboy outfit, my bag of tricks, my guitar, entertained the kids for 45 minutes, and actually I watched all the other guys who were auditioning
Oh,
before I went. And then they said, okay, it's your turn. But I had all the confidence in the world by that time, because I saw those other guys. I was the only one who didn't have a Brooklyn accent. They were all Brooklyn cowboys. And so I entertained the kids. They voted to have me do the show.
the kids voted you in.
Yeah,
Well, that's a wonderful thing.
yeah, that. And so the next week, I was on the Dumont Television Network.
A network.
Hosting the Okie Dokie Ranch.
Yeah.
Now, did they remember you had applied for the job or a job?
No.
Different group of
And
people.
I didn't
Oh, okay.
mention that, by the way.
Good, okay.
I didn't mention that. But that was a wonderful experience, and it was a great thing. And then I got a call from NBC in Philly, and they wanted to know if I wanted to come and be their children's television personality. And they gave me the price, and I said, okay, and I packed up and went to Philly, and I was on the air 5 years in
And that's
Philly.
an extraordinary run, 5 years anywhere.
Yep, yep. So then after 5 years, they sold the station, and they said, well, we sold the station, so if you want to stay with Westinghouse, which was the owner, we have a station in Boston, and we'll put you on there. So off I went to Boston, and I had 13 weeks left on my contract.
Oh,
And so I did the 13 weeks, and 13 weeks turned into 20 years.
now was that the same studio that's on Soldiers Field Road?
Yeah,
So it's the same big building that's iconic in this region as well.
sure.
BZ.
Yeah, one of the first stations to broadcast television in Boston. And it's the 55th anniversary of when he first came to Boston in 1956. So we're kicking off the Boomtown 55th anniversary tour right here on your show.
55th, and this is show number 500, and it's Ronald Reagan's 100th, and we're going to get to another landmark, the 50th anniversary of the, well, on April 10th, you've got All About the Ark.
That's right.
Should we go there now?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Mike?
I'll just tell you a little bit about it. The Ark of Massachusetts is having a fundraising event on April 10th. It's called.
What is the Ark?
The Ark originally was the Association for Retarded Children, which became the Association for Retarded Citizens of Massachusetts. And now it's just the Ark of Massachusetts. And
ARC, okay.
Right, and it's to help children with learning disabilities, and this is something that Rex has been involved in for 50 plus years. So 50 years ago, Rex led a wagon train across Massachusetts, 16 covered wagons, to raise awareness.
Horse-drawn covered wagon.
Horse-drawn.
Yes.
I didn't realize that. Horse-drawn covered
Horse-drawn.
wagons. Amazing.
Teams of horses, regular covered wagons, started out in Greenfield, all the way to Boston. And it was to promote understanding for retarded children.
And this is 50 years ago, so it was 1961?
61.
Yeah.
But previous to that, people were in the dark ages with this. I mean, children were
absolutely.
institutionalized, no one wanted to talk about it or deal with it. And Rex used his TV show basically to invite the kids in who were just part of the audience. There was no special attention or made, it was just, you're part of the group. And I think that's what made it special, was that they just, kids in wheelchairs, anybody with disabilities, had a fair shot by being on Boomtown.
And it was remarkable to be so sensitive to their needs back in those days when people weren't really politically correct or
Right.
sensitive to things.
That's absolutely true. And it outraged me. And I thought anybody could be on my show.
Wow, what a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So the wagon train was a caravan across Massachusetts, and they would stop at different towns and have gatherings and campfires, and the townspeople would come out and participate, and people would bring their children with disabilities and just blend in with the crowd. They eventually got to the State House. I guess that was the ultimate destination.
It was. And we were hoping that we could convince the legislature to contribute to the whole understanding principle. And they did. And it worked out very well.
So the power of persistence, the ability to use the wonderful platform you had, and some tender loving care.
And it was a real wagon train.
Yeah.
I mean, starting out in Greenfield all the way to Boston, winding up on Beacon Hill.
I haven't watched the whole thing. I've been watching this, but then you get sidetracked, writing articles and deadlines. Is the wagon train in here?
There is a segment on here called Citizen Rex, where we show the wagon train, his work with muscular dystrophy, but we do have an entire film of that event.
Oh, it's a separate film.
It was a whole film that was shot by Skip Boucher, who was a student at Emerson at the time, and he worked on the show with Rex. And
Student
he-
at Emerson in '61.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and he took a 16mm camera along for 6 days or however long it was, and documented the entire thing. So we're
That's tremendous.
It's amazing footage because
That
it's
is
all
tremendous.
vintage, and he stops in Worcester and gets a key from the mayor.
None of it planned. It was cinema verite.
I love cinema
Yeah.
verite.
Yeah.
I love it. That's amazing. So, did you start teaching at Emerson? When did you start teaching?
That was after Boomtown went off the air.
Oh, okay. But
And-
you had Emerson connections, obviously, since you were in broadcasting.
All of the people who were on my show as assistants were from Emerson. And so after it was all over, Boomtown was all over after 20 years, Emerson called me up and said, "How would you like to teach here?" I said, "Teach? Teach what?" "Well, you've been teaching our kids for all these years." And many of whom had become famous by that time. And so off I went, and I put together a class that I'm still teaching there.
And what is the class called?
It's performance for TV and production.
Oh, so if I took the class at Emerson, you'd teach the basics, how to perform on TV and how to produce for TV.
Exactly. And so it's, people have gone from my class onto TV and have become famous people.
Do they realize your heritage in TV, that you started way back in the 40s?
Well, thanks to Mike,
Oh,
they
good.
find
You know,
out.
it's interesting because a lot of people who he had when he was teaching in the 70s, like Stephen Wright and Heather Kahn and Gene Levanchi, and people that have gone on to other careers in broadcasting, of course, knew Rex growing up. And today, these kids are all 19, 20 years old, and so we start the semester off by showing them the Boomtown film, so they get the history of Rex and that he was really there in the pioneering days of television.
Which is called Boomtown Gold. It's great. Boston Sunday Post TV. So that's right from the Boston Sunday
That was
newspaper.
the premiere broadcast. It was on the cover of the Sunday news.
Oh, the premiere broadcast was on the cover? Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just so
And guess
cool.
what? That was the last issue of the Boston Post.
So we're out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, no kidding. And I've been telling people for a long time, I killed the Boston Post.
Well, that's another way of looking at it. I figure it went out in a blaze of glory. That's probably a collector's item on eBay. I bet it would be
Oh, yeah.
a monster.
Yeah, if you can find one.
And the website is rextrailer.com.
Com.
Okay, so rextrailer.com, people can read about all this stuff. And there's also boomtownmemories.com, which is a fan site.
Yeah, that's run by Bob Jordan, Boomtown's #1 fan. He's put together a great fan site where people write in with their stories and pictures, and it's a great aggregator for collecting all this stuff that's out there.
It's amazing the letters we get from
Oh,
people reminiscing about their experience with Boomtown.
well, you didn't have tens of thousands on. You must have had hundreds of thousands on, right?
Of what?
People on the
Yeah,
show.
well, the show was live 3 hours every Saturday and Sunday for 20 years. So we figured 100 kids per show, which is about more than 200,000 kids that were actually on the show, and millions more watched at home.
Millions more watching, but yeah, 200,000 on the air,
Yeah,
in the audience. That's pretty stunning.
yeah. So occasionally we'll run into people that say they were on the show, and then people like me who never got to go on the show had to watch at home because I lived way out in Milford, which was on the moon in those days.
Well, see, as a reward, you get to be on a show with Rex.
Right, and I got to make a documentary about him, which was a great honor. Because when I met him, I just was fascinated. I said, "Where are the old shows?"
And I said, "What shows?" And he said, "The tapes." And I said, "There were no tapes. the show was live for all those years.
So there's few tapes.
Well, there was very little that was. People think that there's like a vault somewhere with all these shows,
Right.
and it just wasn't the case because tape at the time was this, the size of this table
Right.
to record an entire
Expensive.
episode and to store it. So, if anything was taped, it was taped over. And but we did find some tapes. I found one of his old shows from Philly on eBay. Just happened to find it. I happened to buy it. It was just serendipity. And then Rex would say, well, I don't have any old tapes, but come up from we called it the gold mine, he'd come up from the basement with like stacks of film cans. He goes, but I've got this stuff, and it was like gold because it was just all this beautiful footage that was used to go out into the field to record segments that were going to be on the show.
Oh.
And then a lot of behind the scenes stuff too, like the first outdoor Boomtown show, which was across the street from WBZ.
Perfect place to have it.
Oh yeah, a lot of people don't realize there was a trotting track across the street from BZ.
For horses?
Yeah, and trotters and pacers. And I asked them if we could use their field. It turns out that we did. That's the first outdoor program that we did.
And so you have that on tape.
It was
Yeah.
like a Wild West type of show where they had they staged a stagecoach robbery, and Rex had to go riding after him and fight off the bad guys. But it was live TV happening, and they had all these events, and in between they'd cut to cartoons or other programming. But this is all footage of behind the scenes, so you see the cameras, those old TV cameras, and then Rex, beautiful color footage. Riding Gold Rush, standing up in the saddle.
Standing.
Yeah, bullwhip tricks.
Doing the stunts that I used to do in the rodeos.
Yeah, amazing stuff.
Yeah, and it was great fun. But these days I talk to my students at Emerson College, and they ask me about the show, and I tell them that it was 3 hours long every Saturday and Sunday, and not a word was written. They said, no script? And I said, well, there was a format, but no script. So everything you said, because it was live, came out over the air. And 3 hours is a long time on the air. But it came naturally because I did that before on Dumont.
And on the rodeo too before that.
Yeah.
But even like with television, because time is sensitive and you don't want dead air.
Right.
In the old kinescope that I found from Philadelphia, you can see the improvisation as he's trying to entertain the kids and looking for the card where he has to do the pitch for the Alpo dog food or something. So you see live TV really unfolding because there's no stopping it and going back.
Well, Betty White started in TV very, very long ago, and now she's just so revered. I mean, thank God she's getting her due. But people I never realized that you have this incredible history with early television, which I think is important.
Sure.
Boy, that'd be a lovely thing for the students at Emerson to have you document maybe.
Well, one of the things when I first started the film, I was living in New York, and I went to the Museum of TV and Radio, and I said, how do you put somebody into the museum? And they said, well, who is it? And I said, Rex Traylor, and they said, oh, he's a pioneer in children's TV, and they went on and on. They knew all about him, and I said, oh, are you from Boston? And she says, no, but I mean, people in television know who Rex Traylor is. So they said, we'd be honored to put the finished broadcast master into the permanent collection. So when the film was done, it aired on WBZ in 2005, and then Rex flew down in a helicopter to New York City, to Midtown Museum of TV and Radio, and we screened the film and then had a Q&A afterwards, and now the film and its archives are at the Museum of TV and Radio, which is now the Paley Center. But you can go in there and click on Boomtown and watch the movie.
That's important.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Oh, very honored to be able to have that done. And we had a wonderful opening at the museum. And Mike organized that, and we had all my friends on stage who were part of the show, and it was great.
When was that, Mike?
That was in June of 2005. That's when we first...
So it's only 6 years ago.
Yeah.
That's great.
And what's interesting is we premiered the film on WBZ, brought it to the Museum of TV
On what
and
show?
Radio. It was a special. They just aired it as a special.
Oh,
and,
nice.
Everybody from around here is in it. Jay Leno, Mayor Menino, Ernie Bach Jr., Lenny Clark. Everybody we asked said yes. Everybody wanted to be a part of it. So once it aired, we then did film festivals and screenings, and then just recently WGBH aired it again
Nice.
in August. So it's like it's the gift that keeps on giving. People continue to discover it. People who moved away years ago find the website. They want the DVD. They want to relive that part of their childhood. It's very important, especially as we get older.
Now it's a special on the DVD.
It's a 1-hour documentary that's on the DVD, and then there's an
Oh,
additional.
the documentary is actually on here
The documentary's on the DVD.
with Jay Leno and Ernie
Yeah.
Bach and everyone.
Yeah, and
Junior.
that was nominated for an Emmy Award. And then there's an additional hour of bonus footage because we couldn't put all this stuff into the film. So we said, let's put it on the DVD. So we've got clips from the old show in Philadelphia, music videos, the outdoor Boomtown show that we were talking about. So for anybody that wants to relive their childhood with Rex Trailer, it's eye candy.
And you know, I was putting flyers up around town, the library and CVS and Brugger's Bagels and the variety store across the street, and people would say, Rex Trailer. People would stop and talk to me. They all remember you and they love the show. And that's a testament to your work. That's really cool.
Proud of that.
But you know, it's like, here's just one little community in the Commonwealth and they all know who you are.
Well, and I think it's a testament to the impact that he's had on generations of people growing up here. And that's why this Cowboy of the Commonwealth, it's not a joke. It's not frivolous legislation.
No,
I think
no,
that
no.
People need to remember what people have done and how he motivated people by having backyard carnivals for muscular dystrophy. And a lot of those kids have gone on to volunteer for other things. So it's like a sowing of the seeds, you know, and we don't want to forget that. So I think what Senator Fargo is doing is a great honor for Rex.
I should probably mail this Medford Mercury to Senator Fargo because I'm in the Stop and Shop getting this. And the woman behind me, we were talking about your show and Captain Kangaroo and Bozo and Romper Room. And we were saying it was a different time. The kids today have Sesame Street, but they don't have these regional shows where you could go and be part of it.
Yeah.
And that was such a big rush for kids. Just a big moment to be with, you know,
Sure.
their childhood hero.
Well, for me, because when I was growing up in Milford, like we really thought Boomtown was filmed in California, or we'd have to cross the desert to get there and run out of water. And it was right in Boston, but it wasn't as easily accessible then. But suddenly Rex would be landing in a helicopter down at Pheno Field, and we'd all be down there to see him and meet him and get his autograph. And that was huge because you'd see him in color for the first time. He was on black and white TV at home, but then there he was with his tan suit and his white hat, and it was like the real thing.
So the helicopter would come down and the horses would be waiting for you.
Yes. I have been a pilot since I was 14 years old.
A pilot?
My grandfather, who had the ranch I used to work at, had a J3 Piper Cub.
I mean, no one would imagine that if you didn't tell us.
No, it's because instead of having to go out and round up cattle and find them all over the place, he would take the plane and we'd go up and find the cattle and find out where they were. And then talk about communication. There were a group of cowboys on horses, and we would fly down, and the whole side of the Piper Cub, opened up, and he'd cut the engine and glide.
Cut the
and
engine.
we'd fly by the cowboys and say, they're over in the North 40 behind all that brush. And that's how I learned to fly. When I was 14 years old, he got out of the plane and says, okay, take it around. It was my 14th birthday.
And at 14, you were flying an airplane.
Yep,
I'm sorry.
illegal. It was illegal, but out in the middle of East Texas, who was going to check?
So you actually could do stunts on the airplane at 14. You could actually do your, I'm being funny.
Oh, well,
But, you know, that's amazing. That's an amazing story. So,
and then I went on and learned to fly helicopters, gliders, seaplanes.
at what age? 19, 20?
Yeah.
Not at 14.
No, well,
Good.
you know, that's what
Yeah.
started it off.
But that's amazing. That is amazing.
I remember flying into Love Field when I was 14. And by lights, I didn't have a radio in the airplane. So you circle the field, and then they give you a green light, say it's okay to go. And I landed to refuel the airplane. And I refueled the airplane, paid for the gas, and off I went. Nobody said a word.
That is stunning.
Yeah.
Do you remember how old you were when your grandpa took you up on the plane for the first time?
Oh, he used to take me up when I was about 5 years old.
That must have been a real thrill to be 5 and getting into an airplane.
It was like I was there before.
And with
I
your
always
grandpa.
felt comfortable.
And with your
flying.
grandpa.
Yeah.
What great memories.
And who taught your grandfather how to fly?
This is an interesting story. My grandfather and his brother flew before the Wright brothers. Hello? They used to go to state fairs, and they had a huge box kite. And they used to have advertisers put signs on the box kite and pay them. And they would, one of the brothers would go up in the box kite. And they had their crashes and smashes.
Yikes.
But they flew before the Wright brothers. Then 1903, the Wright brothers flew, and they started barnstorming around the country. And the interesting part was my grandfather saw what they were doing and became friendly with them. And he said, I'd like to learn to fly one of those machines. And so they said, okay, put him in the well, it was, I'm trying to think what it was. It was it was a biplane, I remember that. And in 1 hour, he soloed. 1 hour of flying time, and they said, take it around. And he soloed.
Was this your mother or your father's father?
That was my mother's father,
What was his name?
Rutherford. Rexford Rutherford.
Rexford Rutherford, so you're named after him.
Yep.
Wow, what a pioneer of flying and a pioneer of television.
Yeah.
Who was flying before he got on television.
No, it's amazing. I mean, Rex is a
What a
Renaissance guy. He scuba dives, pilot,
Skydiving.
skydiving, sings, is a marksman. I mean, he's done it all.
You have to write the book, guys.
I think there's a movie down the road.
Yeah,
'Cause
sure,
like
there has
shows
to
like
be.
Mad Men, I almost see, I could see John Hamm playing Rex Trailer. It's just, I think it's in.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, yeah.
This is an incredible story because, seeing your show, meeting you at JoJo's party, but never knowing all this. This is amazing, amazing history.
Yeah. And that's why I felt it was important to preserve it, because for me it was, when we were growing up, you were lucky if you had a Super 8 camera or an
Yep.
8mm camera.
Yep.
We had one, our films got destroyed. I really wanted to piece back together some of my childhood. So when I met Rex, actually there was a book that came out called The Boomtown Years in '97. And both my brother and I saw it at Barnes & Noble, and we bought it for each other for Christmas.
Oh, that's
And I was
funny.
like, I want to see the old footage. And so when I met Rex, we were developing a pilot for a kid's show. Another Jojo Laricia, who has a show called JoJo's Dream Cart that Rex and I had developed.
I've heard the name, yeah.
Yeah, she's done very well. It's been on PBS, and so we gave her the tools to go produce it locally at her cable station. But we had Rex on when we were doing the pilot. Rex was on as a guest, and I was in the control room, and there he is with his cowboy hat, and I'm looking at one of these little black and white monitors, and it all came back to me. I was like, it's Rex Trailer, and I just started having these memories of my childhood. And after we finished the pilot, I said, the next project has got to be the Boomtown story. We have to tell the Rex Trailer's Boomtown story. So that's how it began, and I really did it for me. I really just wanted to see it come together, but once I started doing it, everybody shared that same kind of passion and wanted to reconnect. So I think with digital technology today and the internet and the ways people can communicate, just social networking has made it much more accessible for people to he's on Facebook.
Oh,
He tweets.
I put this on my Facebook,
Yeah.
and people immediately hitting it like,
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
It's the 100th anniversary of Ronald Reagan, his birth. And Ronald Reagan wrote you a letter,
He did.
1986 or so.
Yeah.
And this was about your work with muscular dystrophy, I'm guessing?
Yes. Yes, and I have that picture in my office of the letter, and it's on the wall. And I always admired Ronald Reagan, and he was my hero.
I was going to ask you about Ronald Reagan and John Wayne, and it turns out there are connections between you and, Gabby with John Wayne and Ronald Reagan. So, this is the cowboy consortium.
And the amazing part is, growing up in Texas, working at the ranch with my cousin, who was Bob Brown, he and I used to fight over who was the best cowboy on the screen, Gene Autry or Roy Rogers. And we had our arguments about that. And it turns out that I worked with Gene Autry and Roy Rogers in rodeos. And Gene Autry was super, a terrific man. And every time he came to Boston, he appeared on Boomtown.
Oh, how nice.
And then invited me to the rodeo. And I'd ride out with Gene Autry. And it was a big thrill. But can you imagine that? Having a hero on the screen and then all of a sudden working with them?
That is tremendous. That's the kind of thing, it's too bad the tapes weren't so as efficient as they are today, because Gene Autry on the show.
We do have some pictures.
Wow.
We've got pictures of him with Gene Autry, Jack Webb, Jane Mansfield, Alan Shepard. So in those days, celebrity was different than it is now. It was almost like it wasn't as accessible. But when those people came to town and they got together with Rex or came on their show to promote their movie or whatever they were doing, so it's interesting to see those two worlds come together today, because you realize the legendary status of it back then. It puts it into perspective today.
Now, the kids might not know who Jane Mansfield was. I certainly knew growing up, but now that Charlie Sheen's been fired, I guess Jane Mansfield's daughter must be the highest paid actress on TV. Mariska Hargitay. Jane Mansfield's daughter's on Law & Order SVU.
Right.
So I think she was like the second highest paid or up there under
really?
Charlie Sheen. So now she's probably on the top. But you had her mom on. Was she on the show, Jane Mansfield, or?
No, she wasn't on the show, but I was doing some promotion
Oh,
for my book
okay.
and for a tape I had out in New York. And they set up a promotion,
Oh, nice.
and I was putting a cowboy hat on Jane Mansfield in front of the theater when she was doing a show called Will Success Spoil Jane Hunter?
I think I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember the title, yeah. Oh,
And we became friends, and she was one of the wonderful people I met and was in the book. But a lot of guys were very upset because I got to meet her, and they didn't.
I'm a fan because she played with Jimi Hendrix on a record.
She did?
Jimi Hendrix backed her up on one of her records. So I listened to it. It's on YouTube. You can put in Jimi Hendrix, Jane Mansfield, and you can hear Hendrix playing with Jane Mansfield. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Incidentally, she was a wonderful person and smart, very smart.
From what I've read about her,
She
yeah.
played the dumb blonde, but wasn't that way at all in person.
No, to be that successful, you have to be intelligent.
Oh, yeah.
And Marilyn Monroe is very intelligent, they said, too. And very gifted women. I love their records. I like Jane's records. I like Marilyn's records. But it's amazing that your life has all these different twists and turns that are just wonderful.
You never know what's around the next corner, and that's what I love about show business and being in it. And the one thing I found was that the more talented the person is, the nicer they are.
Interesting. So they have no airs about themselves because they're confident.
They're confident, you know, and just about everybody I met in the business. I did some films out at Universal, and it was just great meeting all these people, and famous people, but they were real people. And that's one thing I found out. The more talented they were, the nicer they were.
And you can see some of those people in the film too. Fess Parker, Charlton Heston, Andy Griffith, people that he had met when he was first started doing the tours in California.
Fess Parker and I were great friends because when he came to Boston, I used to fly him in my plane at a twin-engine Beechcraft Baron. And then when I went to Hollywood for personal appearances or whatever, he would take me up in his Beechcraft.
You guys are courageous too, because I would think twice, 3 times before getting on board. That's
Well, we never had a problem.
no, and you learned at an early age, so it must be.
Yeah,
Is it fun to fly, to like drive the plane?
yeah. I was doing a film in California at Universal,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a film called Road West, and it was a series. And while I was there, I got in touch with Fess Parker, who had been on Boomtown. Incidentally, when he was on Boomtown as a guest, we renamed Boomtown Boontown because he was playing Daniel Boone at the time. And he said, hey, when you get out to the coast, come on out to see me. And so we were out there, and I had a film crew with me and a director. And I said to the director, let's go on over and visit Bess Parker. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, just go and visit him? And I said, he told me if I ever get out to the West Coast, come and visit him on the set. He was doing Daniel Boone in the largest indoor-outdoor soundstage in the world. They had rivers, streams, forests, deserts, everything on this soundstage. And so off we go. And this guy, the director, Pat Pantanini, his name was, and I guess still is. And he said, this is ridiculous. You're going to get kicked out. And I said, he told me to come and visit him. So we went over and got to the guard gate. It's Rex trailer to see Bess Parker. Oh, okay. And the guy said, this is embarrassing. He's not going to know who the heck you are. They all say that. If you get to the West Coast, come and visit me. So the guard gets a call back, show him in.
Door opens.
And the door opens, in we go with the whole crew, and Bess is filming an episode. And we're standing behind the cameras. All of a sudden he looks up and says, hey, Rex, how are you? Cut. And he said, anything you want to do, let's do it. And we had our film crew there, and turned out to be great.
Well, you've been a great guest, and we have to cut here.
What? I've got so much more to tell you.
We could do part 2 if you have time, but I'm feeling like I'm on Boomtown, and thanks so much, Rex Trailer, Mike. I want to say thanks to Melody Wing and to Jay LaFond, and happy birthday, Joe LaRocca. Can we say
Happy
Happy
birthday,
birthday.
Joe.
happy birthday, Joe LaRocca, March 9th, 2011, and Rex Trailer on Visual Radio. Thank you guys both.
And April 10th, the Ark of Massachusetts. All aboard the Ark with Rex Trailer.
All aboard the Ark.